Hello everybody, my name is KingStix, and in this video we're going to be looking at some interesting upcoming changes for patch 9.2. This is going to be the patch of the brand new true season 9 that we're all going to be playing the new rank season on. I'll leave a TLDR down in the description below. The first interesting change is Aurelion Sol's Q. They're changing the recast time to go off much faster, from 0.65 seconds to 0.25 seconds. On the flip side, now the stun scales off of the size and it has a much lower minimum stun duration. The minimum stun duration is going to 0.55 seconds at rank 1, and at max rank is going to be at 0.75 seconds, which is very low if you consider at rank 1 it used to be 1.1 seconds. And the maximum stun duration is going all the way up to 2.25 at max rank. So theoretically, in a team fight, if you can get a big disc, it's going to be stronger than before. But in a 1v1, or if you're just using it really quickly to catch someone off guard or to get away, it's going to be terrible, lasting for almost nothing at all. So Aurelion Sol's 1v1 potential in lane is definitely going down. He is going to be forced into a position where he has to rely off of roams more than maybe getting a few cheeky kills in lane because people don't know how to play against him. Not many people play Aurelion Sol, so I'm interested to see what an Aurelion Soulmate would have to say about this. If you are one, let me know down in the comments below. The next interesting changes apply to Neeko. Her R is getting a cooldown increased at early ranks, and at her final rank it is actually going to be 10 seconds lower on cooldown, going from 90 seconds to 80 seconds, so it's a late game buff and an early game nerf. She's also losing the slow that her ultimate used to grant when she leapt into the air. They are counteracting this by giving Neeko 20% magic penetration that lasts for 4 seconds after her disguise break if she goes invisible. On top of that, they're giving her W 1 more second of invisibility, and they're also giving it 1 more second of speed increase. They are also adding a 40% AP ratio to how many champions are around her whenever she's using her R. Overall, this really does seem like a buff to Neeko, even though it does have some nerfs along with it. I would personally rather see them pull damage away from Neeko and give her more utility with invisibility and speed up, rather than also giving her that extra magic penetration, which I don't feel like she really needed. Surprisingly, Irelia is getting some more nerfs. She is a very overstacked champion, but it is surprising to see it with how much they've been nerfing her lately. They are completely removing the bonus damage she dealt to shields on max stacks on her passive. This shouldn't matter in most matchups since most champions don't have a self shield or a shield in general, but it was just a really nice situational thing for her to have, get through champions who did have shields like Orianna or Janna, or taking out someone like Victor. Her Q is also getting a slight nerf. It no longer deals double damage to minions. Now it instead deals a flat amount of bonus damage to minions, which you will see be increasingly worse as the game goes on, rather than having the nice double damage. Irelia's R damage is going up significantly from 75 to 125 at rank 1 to 175 to 275 at rank 3. The slow potency is being increased as well, from 60% to 90%. So if you try to step through this sucker now, you're pretty much in a Nasus slow. On the flip side, the wall duration is being lowered from 2.5 seconds at rank 1 to 3.5 seconds at rank 3 to a flat 2.5 seconds at all ranks. So the scalability on it in terms of slow is going to be quite a bit worse, and it no longer disarms enemies passing through the wall. This is huge for low elo. I see people all the time try to run through her R because they don't think anything's going to happen, or they're clumsy. Now though, if you walk through the wall, you'll no longer be disarmed, so you'll still be able to auto attack and do damage to her. You're just going to be taking more damage from the wall itself, and the slow will be larger. This is a pretty good buff for AD carries. Shyvana is getting a solid buff on her passive. Now instead of doing 10% more damage to dragons, it will now be doing 20% more damage to dragons. It's hard to say how impactful this will really be since it's still very situational. If the enemies have dragon warded or if the enemy jungler is stronger, that 10% more damage to dragons doesn't necessarily mean a lot. It's only really going to be useful if you can manage to sneak a dragon. With that being said, Shyvana still isn't that great in the early, mid, or late game. One of the more interesting changes on this list is Ignite. They are going to be nerfing its early game and late game damage substantially. Early game, it's losing 10 damage. In late game, it is losing 95 damage, which is quite a bit. I am personally down for this. I feel like Ignite in the late game has way too much flat true damage. 505 true damage is what it's at right now. After this nerf happens in 6 days, we will be looking at 410. I think that's a lot more reasonable, and in the current meta, we are seeing several ignites per team and maybe at most one exhaust. I think this is a pretty good balance and it's been a long time coming. One of the biggest changes happening next patch is Kayn. They're making it much easier for Kayn to choose which form he wants and much more apparent of which form he's going to end up getting. And there are also a lot of bug fixes. Other than that, there's not much to say about it. If you want, just pause it and read it if you're a Kayn enthusiast, because if you're not a Kayn enthusiast, none of this really applies to you. Apparently the balance team doesn't like how strong jungle is, so we were seeing some significant nerfs to the jungle. First off, with challenging Smite, the damage per tick is being lowered by a little bit. The damage total is being lowered by quite a bit at max rank. The dot duration is also being lowered from 3 seconds to 2 seconds, which is actually a slight buff, but whenever you take the damage into account, it's still a significant overall nerf. And it no longer grants vision on the marked target, which is huge. Red Smite was amazing because whenever you used it, if someone went invisible or if they entered a bush, you were still able to see them, which was amazing. Since they're taking that away, it's going to be a lot more appealing going for Blue Smite. And on Blue Smite as well, we are seeing damage nerfs, not quite as significant as on the Red Smite, so I think Blue Smite and Blue Smite junglers might become a little bit more prevalent. Riot's thought process on this that they listed in their notes is that they were seeing a range of viable junglers at all MMRs, some of whom have strong level 2 gank patterns, some of whom don't, which isn't necessarily true. If you look at the top 10 junglers right now in League of Legends, looking at all the top 10 tier junglers, 9 out of 10 of them are early red buff gank junglers. Number 1 is Elise. She can easily take red buff, gank at level 2. She'll have a stun, ranged red buff slows, really sticky champion. Number 2 on the list, we have 𝐒𝐻𝐂𝐈𝐀𝐋𝐒. He could potentially gank after red buff. He does it sometimes to 𝐒𝐿. He'll start Q, then he'll take jump level 2 and 𝐒𝐿 a lane. Number 3, we have Graves. Number 4, Xin Zhao. Number 5, 𝐒𝐿. Number 6, Lee Sin. Number 7, Kindred. Number 8, Jax. And number 9, Pantheon. All 9 of those are heavy red buff gank junglers. And at number 10, we have Evelynn, so she's the exception. After not stressing how OP level 2 gank junglers are and them being the only viable junglers in higher elo, then they say there are certainly some champions that fill out a line at level 2 and we're looking at their jungling power as a result. We believe the issue here is individual problem cases rather than early ganks being a possibility. So they think that it's because some junglers are too weak rather than level 2 ganks being a possibility, which is mostly wrong. The issue is that blue buff is absolute garbage. Red buff is fucking amazing. Red buff gives a slow, it gives damage, and it gives health regen. Blue buff only gives mana regen and 10% CDR, both of which are pretty gosh darn shit early game, because if you kill a scuttle crab, it pretty much refreshes your whole mana bar. Blue buffs are not essential whatsoever. What this means is mage junglers are forced to start on red buff. People like Elise and Evelynn, if they don't start on red buff, they lose the game and they have absolutely zero ganking pressure. So what this does is it forces every single jungler to play the same way, which is red buff gank or red buff gank scuttle. The issue is that's the only definite way, since blue buff is garbage, but more importantly, scuttle crabs give mana, which they should not. The fact that scuttle crab gives mana allows junglers to not prioritize blue buff whatsoever in the early game. Then Riot also mentions how they plan on nerfing jungle camp experience significantly because they don't like how junglers can kind of keep up with levels with solo lanes. They want junglers to be the same level or below the bot lane. Assuming I'm not getting counter jungled or not having to mess with the enemy jungler and not doing any ganks, whenever I play Evelynn, who is a really fast farm jungler, whenever I do my power farm route, I can always hit level 6 before my bot lane, but it's highly consistent that my mid laner and top laner will hit 6 at the same time or slightly before me. As a jungler, you're not rewarded for farming at all, and now they're going to be nerfing farming even more, while at the same time they're saying that red buff level 2 junglers aren't the problem. The problem is other junglers just can't compete with that. You're nerfing the other junglers by nerfing the experience. Junglers that rely off of power farming like Evelynn, you're just knocking them out of it and giving even more power to early gank junglers by removing jungle XP even further. During this preseason, which is about to end in 6 or 7 days, I've been practicing a lot of mid lane and support, and I'm glad I've been doing that since jungle is just getting gutted even further. And the way they're gutting it, it really looks like that red buff junglers are going to stay prevalent and be even more prevalent than they have been. And the final interesting change that I'm going to tack on at the end, because it's very lighthearted, is some very minor changes to the rune. runes. They are slightly nerfing the adaptive force for AP, minusing 1 AP and minusing 0.6 AD, since most champions will just mindlessly stack adaptive force unless they're an auto attack based champion, in which case they'll get the attack speed and adaptive force. And they are giving a very minor buff to armor and a decent buff to magic resist. The armor is going up by 1 and magic resist is going up by 2. This will encourage people to actually think about what flex rune they're going to take rather than always just throwing down the adaptive force. And that is going to wrap up this video. I haven't made one of these in a while. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to support the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.